Hello again, everybody. Martin Lehner here from Orange Technology. And in this video, I want to talk about how I hire staff. So, a lot of you who are watching my videos from what I gather from some of the emails that I get, um, are students, people looking to get into the IT field, and that sort of thing. So, based on that, obviously, most of you are going to be looking at getting jobs. Some of you will start your own company, some of you will be consultants on your own, but a lot of you are going to be looking for jobs. So I wanted to take an opportunity here in this video and talk a bit about the hiring process and what I look for. Okay. Um, I will start by telling you that everything you're pretty much told in school by career counselors, all those people, is pretty much all a bunch of nonsense. Okay, um, I don't hire on paper credentials alone. That's the first thing. First of all, um, you know, let me scale back first. For those of you who don't know, maybe your first video of you watching me. My name is Martin Lehner. I own a IT service provider called Orange Technology. Got a jacket on there. For those of you in the US, you guys are using the term MSP more, managed services provider, but basically third-party IT support, right? So I started this company 6 years ago. I was originally the only employee. I got my first few clients, managed networks, dealt with troubleshooting, deployed IP phone systems, did all this kind of stuff, and grew from there. So now it's a company of 9 people. All right, so I quite frankly, I do a little bit less of the day-to-day troubleshooting and working with the technology, and a lot more administrative things. Of course, I still do work with the technology itself. That is what I enjoy doing, but I do have quite a few staff. So, given that, obviously I had to hire people, right? So what did I look for when I hire somebody? When I put out job ads, yes, I am looking for someone with experience in computers, certifications preferred, education preferred, comfortable with desktop operating systems, server operating systems, blah, blah, blah. And, that's what I put out. What do I get for resumes? Usually not too many certifications. So sometimes some experience. Most of it is I fixed my neighbor's computer, I fixed my home computer. Like that's pretty much what I get. In my area where I'm at, so I live in a city named Whitehorse. It is in the territory of Yukon. That's in northern Canada. So we are, for those of you that don't know exactly where I am here, I'm basically on the Canadian side of Alaska. Okay, Alaska's our neighbor. So I'm pretty far up there. It's a city of 30,000 people, so it's not super tiny, but it's not very big by any means. It is the capital city of the territory. That being said, whenever I put job ads out, it's very rare that I get anybody with any kind of paper credentials, education. I'll get people with A plus, Net plus, that kind of thing. I won't get anybody with MCSEs and things like that. Quite frankly, I don't actually care. I really don't care. When I hire, I'm looking for attitude, and I'm looking for a willingness to learn. The problem that I've seen with technology professionals who do have lots of credentials is they are very set in their ways, right? I got my MCSE, I got my CCNA, I got, this or that. I got my Windows Server 2003. And that's great. I mean, at that time when they were going to school, when they were learning this stuff, that was the current. But it's 2016 now. I actually had this. I actually had this with an interview with one person that I was looking at hiring when I was filling my last vacancy, and I brought this person in, and they had some credentials, they had some training. They didn't really have a lot of certifications, but I mean they had some training, they had some experience. And one of the things they had written on the resume was they had done some courses at our local college. They hadn't completed the entire program. They dropped out for whatever reason, but they did complete some of the courses, and one of them was Windows Server 2003. And I was like, okay, and this is, that was a few years back. And I said, okay, great. Hey, you know what? You did do some education, you did do some training, you didn't finish it, whatever. I don't really care. But obviously, you're interested in the field, so tell me about what you've done more recently. And basically, without going into too much detail, basically what I got back was they learned Server 2003. They got to work in the field on some production 2003 servers, but that's it. That's all they'd done. I said, oh, all right, all right. So, I mean, have you deployed any servers recently in any of these, if you're working in a job or whatever this was, where you had this interaction with production environments? Did you deploy any new systems, or were they already existing and you just managed them? And this person said, yes, actually, I did deploy new systems. I'm like, oh, perfect, perfect. So what's the latest system you were deploying? Server 2003. I said, okay, when did you deploy these? And it was literally like a year ago. I said, okay, so it's 2015 when you deployed them, right? I'm understanding this correctly? Yes, yes. Okay. You're deploying a over 10 years old, 12-year-old operating system a year ago. Well, that's the one I learned on, so that's what I've been deploying. I'm not comfortable with the newer stuff because I haven't been trained in it. Okay, I mean, hey, I understand wanting to do what you're familiar with, wanting to do what you're trained in. I get that. But that being said, so I asked a couple other questions, right? Because, okay, I mean, that's an answer, but let me dig a little deeper, right? So, hey, have you played with Server 08? Have you played with Server 2012? Do you have it in a lab environment? Maybe not. Maybe you're not comfortable doing that in a production environment. You're not confident enough in your skills. That's fine. But have you at least been looking at those? No. Okay, it's like you're busy, you haven't had time. Like, what is it? I haven't been trained in that. I've been trained in this. That's the only thing I do. Okay. I mean, that was pretty much the end of the interview. For me anyways. I mean, I asked a few more things. Maybe there's something I'm missing, but yeah, I mean, pretty much that was the end of the interview. Why is it the end of the interview? This person was trained in 03. They worked on 03, and that's fine. I'm sure they knew 03 very well. But the fact is, they didn't want to touch anything else or learn anything else because they knew this. They knew this. I want to do it this way. That's not the technology field. That's not the IT field. The IT field is dynamic. It's fluid. You have to be willing to look at new things, literally from day to day even, right? I mean, 5 years ago, the cloud was not as big as it is today, right? I would argue back when Server 2012 was deployed, when Server 2012 first came out, I would argue that the cloud was not as big as it is now. I mean, Server 2012 from that's Microsoft's, Server 2012 R2, the second release, is actually the current operating system. We're expecting a new Server OS this year. But anyways, Server 2012, what they did in Server 2012 was they integrated the ability to put things into the cloud and collaborate with basically Microsoft Azure, right? There's things in Server 2012 that allow you to connect with Azure and make Azure kind of part of your network despite it being in the cloud and not on premise. That came out in 2012, right? That was built into 2012. That wasn't built into Server 08, right? And when that was built into 2012, when 2012 came out, that was one of the new features that they pushed, but it wasn't the reason to buy 2012, right? That was kind of a, hey, we've got this cloud thing that's integrated now. Well, that's cool. Here's some of the other new stuff that's in 2012 that you should really get excited about, right? Even back then, the push to use cloud was not as high or as prominent as it is now. So these are things you need to be able to adapt to and work with. And literally, I mean, imagine I said, I mean, again, I started this 6 years ago. Server 2012 was not around, okay? Imagine I said, I know Server 08, that's all I'm doing. And now, in 2016, I say the same thing, I only do Server 08. Seriously? Like I only do Server 08? In this day and age? I mean, imagine if that's how I acted. I would say that my relationship with the majority of my clients is extremely good. I could probably push Server 08 on the majority of my clients and they would take it because they would trust my expertise and trust my recommendations. But I mean, that's only going to last so long, right? I mean, putting old stuff out there is only going to last so long. At some point, people are going to want those new features. They're going to say, you know what? I talked to this other guy who runs this business, is a friend of mine. Man, he's using this Azure thing. Can we have that? Can we have that ability? You know, I think back and I got I'll give you a story. I'll stray a little bit from the HR hiring topic I want to talk about, but I got a client once, and the reason I got this client is they called me up and they said, hey, I want to, we're looking at changing our IT services provider. Could you come in and chat with us? So I said, of course, yes. Went and had a meeting with them. And the reason they wanted to change IT service providers was because they wanted remote access into their network. They just wanted to access files remotely. I go, okay, no problem. They actually had the equipment on premise to do it. Their firewall was capable of doing VPN, basically. But the previous service provider refused to do it because, their security reasons was one argument. Okay, I mean, I'm not saying there aren't. There's certainly implications in having a remote access. But basically that provider had never done remote access. They didn't recommend it, and they didn't want to figure out how to implement it. They basically told their client, we're not interested in doing remote access. If you want that, get somebody else to set it up. It's not something we do. And they lost that client. They lost the network. They lost administration of the network. They lost that entity as a client. And again, because you don't want to give people remote access into a network. I mean, VPN's been around for, I don't know. I used it a decade ago when I worked in the cellular space. I was using VPN to remotely access. That was a decade ago, right? This is not something new. But again, I know this particular IT services provider, the other one, again, I live in a small area. I know all of my competitors, all the people in the industry. This particular IT services provider, they started providing service at a time when something like VPN didn't really exist or was only for the really big enterprise. Everybody wasn't doing it. And basically nobody needed it at that time either. The requirements from clients, from small businesses, from organizations wasn't something that required remote access. The how people worked didn't require that at the time. So when they started operating, VPN was something that didn't exist. And basically, they just kept operating like that. They didn't adapt to the environment, the changing environment. And IT is a changing environment. If anybody tells you technology is not a changing environment, right? That's not true. That is not true. That's just either a lie, or someone's lying to themselves, or lying to you, or they don't understand it. It's one of those. So back to HR and how I hire people. Paper credentials are great. I like certifications. I like people who've been trained. I like all that kind of stuff. I will say classroom is very different than real world. If all you have is classroom and no real world, expect a big difference in the real world from what you've learned. But that being said, paper credentials are great. Real world experience, I would argue, is even better. But the most important thing is I need staff. I need people who are willing to learn and they're willing to try new things. I need people who are willing to adapt. That's the biggest thing. It's attitude for me. Attitude is the number one thing that I look for when hiring people. Okay? They've got to have some experience. Like, I won't hire someone who's never touched a computer. Don't get me wrong. You got to have some experience with a computer. Even if it's your own, even if it's working on your neighbor's computers, your family, friends, whatever, you got to have some kind of experience. But it doesn't have to be huge, right? If you're comfortable. The biggest thing is, are you comfortable doing something you've never seen before? Are you comfortable fiddling with something? If you're stuck somewhere and there's no resources around and you got to fix something, are you comfortable trying, right? That's an attitude. Another thing is, and I ask everybody this, and if you're coming for an interview for me and you're looking me up, you're going to get a hint here. I ask everybody, you're in a situation I give them a very specific problem, right? And this could be IP phone related, this could be firewall related. I change that up every so often. But I give the interviewee a problem that I know they don't know how to solve. Okay, they've never seen this piece of equipment before, they've never worked on it. Well, I'm assuming that. I'm picking something really specific. If they've seen it before, oh, great, they got experience in that, awesome, right? Because it's something we deal with, or whatever, right? But in my experience, I'm always picking something these interviews have never heard of. So I give them this scenario and I say, how would you go about figuring this out if you have never seen it before, right? And the answer I'm looking for is basically there's a few answers that are good, but the ones that have gotten this question correct or have answered in a way that I would expect have said I would probably try and Google it, get a manual. What I'm looking for is, I mean, that's simple, right? Hey, you Google a manual and hey, that's how I turn the DHCP feature on this particular appliance or whatever, right? What I'm looking for is, how does your mind work? How is your thought process? How is your troubleshooting process in your mind work if you're presented with something you have no idea about? What resources are available to you that you understand are available to you that you can use when you are stuck and don't understand something, right? And that's something that so many people, they just don't get, right? Yeah, you can Google it, or you can, whatever. There's a few other answers. I don't want to give away all the answers. Googling is one of the answers. But again, it's one of those things, you need to know where your resources are. What could you try? If you're just like, oh, I've never seen that, I can't touch it. Yeah, I'm screwed. Okay, I mean, that's not very good troubleshooting. That's not very good. That's not being resourceful, right? Resourcefulness is a trait that as a good technology professional, you must have. You must be able to, think of your resources, use your resources, and figure out ways to basically figure out what the issue is, right? I mean, I had I experienced this the other day in. I can't give too many specifics in this particular one, and there's reasons for that. But basically, there was a piece of equipment that nobody knew how to access. Somebody had installed it, and well, long story short, nobody knew how to access this thing. We couldn't go back to the person that put it in. So how did we find out how to access this thing? And it was something that we don't deploy, we don't usually deal with at all. It was very specific to this industry. It wasn't a general technology product that everybody uses. It was very specific. And literally, we just had to start trying, right? Googled around, got a couple hints. We didn't get the answer, but the hints that we got from Googling around led us into, getting to a certain point where then we could try something ourselves based on our own experiences and what we thought might work. And then we got it working, okay? The thing. And that's really what I'm looking for. So it's attitude, it's resourcefulness, it's things like that. And these are traits that they're not specific to technology professionals. They're not specific to paper credentials of the profession or anything like that. But these are traits you have to have as a person, right? And if you're out there, if you're looking to get a job in IT, you're looking to work in IT, you're looking to work in technology, anything like that, these are the things you need to be working on, right? You could have a million different paper credentials. You passed every test that anybody could throw at you, right? But if you're not able to look up a user manual on the internet, or you're not able to try installing Windows Server 2012 in a virtual lab environment to just see what it's like, if you can't do that, I do Server 08 and nothing else, the paper's not useful. The paper's not useful in this day and age. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, that was useful. Maybe that's what we needed back then. Again, I'm not old enough to know what it was like back then. But, in this day and age, that's not how it is. You need to be dynamic. You need to be willing to try new things. You need to be willing to try things out. You need to be at the forefront of technology, right? You need to be at the edge, at the leading edge. And if you're not, then I'm sorry. Like, I'm gonna pick somebody different. Literally, the last person I hired was totally based on attitude. There was actually an applicant that looked better on paper and had actually done more education. But when I talked to them about what they were doing personally, because they weren't working in IT, neither of the applicants, the one that won or the one that was awarded the position and the one that wasn't, neither of them were working in IT. Basically they were working outside of IT. And when I talked to them, one was actively learning. Well, both were kind of actively learning outside of their jobs. They were still being active in learning about IT, which is great. That's great. That's what I want to see. The one who got the job was also actively repairing things, fixing things, building their own computer, troubleshooting their own computer, troubleshooting friends' computers. They had a virtual environment. They were playing actually with Linux, learning a little bit about Linux and command line and things like that. Again, Linux not something we deal with too much in our environment, but still, this person was showing initiative in that they wanted to keep growing their knowledge. The other person who didn't get the job was still learning a little bit, right? They were still doing things here and there, but they weren't actively doing anything. They didn't have a virtual lab. They weren't trying out the newest server versions. They weren't doing any of that. And again, before anybody hates on me and says, well, it costs money and time to do that stuff. Does it take time? Yes. Does it cost money? Not really. You can download Windows Server 2012 trial edition for free. Lasts for 6 months. You can download and install it for 6 months. It's free. Then literally you can format the computer it's on and then install it again for another 6 months if you want, right? You can do that. I would argue you probably want to do it in a virtual machine. That's even easier. So, I mean, literally, like, you can buy VMware's Workstation, which is a desktop virtualization. So it runs, like, if you have a laptop, okay, let's say you have a laptop, you install this, it's a piece of software, you download and install, and you can create virtual machines that just run from your desktop. So they just run in a window. So it's not a type 1, type 2 hypervisor. I always forget which ones. One's a bare metal hypervisor, so you don't have an operating system that you can use, right? It's just a hypervisor, and then you create virtual machines off of that. But the second kind is a software virtualization. So you already have a computer that has an operating system installed on the bare metal, and then you can virtualize within that, right? So again, that VMware Workstation, last time I had to license one, was about $90. It's not much money, guys. $90 is not much money. You get that, you download the trial of Windows Server, and away you go. And Google's full of resources, guys. I mean, you can go on YouTube and you can watch videos about administering Windows Server 2012, installing Windows Server 2012. You can Google it, you can read forums. There's lots of resources out there that, yes, they will take time. They don't necessarily cost money, or they cost a little bit of money, right? And you can go and you can expand yourself by doing that. You can play with these things. Most major firewall manufacturers, UTMs, Universal Threat Management manufacturers, there's a couple out there. WatchGuard, Fortinet, SonicWall, Checkpoint. There's many out there. Most of them have an online interface where you can log in with a demo account and you can see what the interface, what the GUI, what the web GUI looks like on these firewalls, and you can manipulate things. I just did this on Fortinet on a DDoS mitigation appliance, because there's a lot of talk right now about distributed denial of service attacks, and this is creeping up on it's always been an issue, but right now it seems to be more of an issue. I don't know why Anonymous is going crazy. I have no idea. But basically, I was just looking to inform myself. None of my clients, knock on wood, so far have had any DDoS issues, but they might. I mean, statistical probability, the chances are higher now. So I want to learn a bit about it. So I went on Fortinet's. They make an appliance specifically to protect against distributed denial of service. So, and they had a web GUI, right? So I just log on. Demo was the account username and password, and I just log on to that thing, and I'm in the GUI, and I can change settings. I can do all kinds of stuff. Obviously, it's not a live machine. It's a sandbox environment, but it is the actual GUI. It is the actual interface that you would be using. So you could literally not buy this appliance whatsoever, but you could spend a few hours looking through the interface and you would know how to configure. You'd know how to use it. You would understand it. So again, you don't have to buy the appliance. You can just log on and try it, right? And these are, again, when I go back to resourcefulness, if you don't want to buy these appliances, and I understand some of these appliances are thousands of dollars, you don't want to buy them just to play in your house, right? But if you're resourceful, you're going to find out that you actually don't need to buy these appliances to get experience in them. There's a web GUI for demo purposes. Log into that guy and play around, change settings, do all of that. And you can do that, right? You can do that, and it basically doesn't cost you anything. You got some internet bandwidth, I guess, and of course your time, but that's it. But it's attitude. And that's what I look for when I hire staff, is I look for attitude. I can train anybody to add a user in Active Directory. I have yet to find a person that I could not train, I have yet to find an employee that I've hired, or quite frankly interviewed, that I don't think I would have been able to train to add a user in Active Directory. That is not a problem. I can train someone to do that pretty quickly. I've hired lots of people who had never touched a server in their life before. Okay, who now administer servers successfully. They're good. They can troubleshoot, et cetera, and they'd never touched it beforehand. But they had the correct attitude and they had the resourcefulness where I could easily start to teach them how to work in the server environment, and then they would learn on their own, and they would ask me questions on things they didn't understand, and I could, help them in that. And basically, it was a combined effort where I would teach and they would also learn on their own, and they would just gain these skills, right? They gain this experience. My best server tech right now, didn't touch a server when he got hired by me, right? He did not touch a server when he got hired by me. He hadn't touched one whatsoever. But he had the right attitude. And with the right attitude, I was able to teach him and get him to the point where it worked, that he was able to then grow to that. So yeah, just something to think about. It's not always about the paper. Attitude is a huge component to getting hired. It's a huge component to HR. It's a huge component to being a successful employee. And I don't think I'm alone in that opinion. I don't think there's a situation where I'm crazy and I'm the only one acting like this. I think a lot of people do. Yeah, just some things to think about. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video, and I will see you guys at the next one.